Yeah, no, that's awesome. Is being upstairs Good morning. My name is Ed Scott. On behalf of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our online gathering this morning. It's so good to be with you, whether you're here present in the sanctuary or those of you who are joining from home. It's also good to be with Helen Foss, our worship leader for this morning. Also participating is Kathy Harris, our music director, and Sarah Barlow, special vocalist this morning. All are welcome in this community of faith. You're welcome as you are, whoever you are, and wherever you find yourself this morning on your own personal spiritual journey. Welcome. I do have a couple of announcements to make this morning, and one is a reminder of our mask mandate that's still in effect, but you are encouraged to sing softly at the appropriate times during the worship service. There will be no beverages served in Parish Hall after the service, but you are encouraged to greet one another and to get reacquainted during this time. The first announcement is this brochure is available at the rear of the sanctuary regarding our Reemergence Summer Camp for Adults, August 28th, 29th, and 30th. And there's way more information in this brochure than I could highlight for you this morning, unless you want to stay here till 12 o'clock. But this is a beautiful brochure, kind of like a butterfly opening from a chrysalis, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it and be able to read all the details of this fine program, which has been put together by many volunteers. Also, a reminder that Saturday, September 10th, there's a summer block party here starting at 4 o'clock. There's a cookout at 5:30 and followed by coffee house entertainment. And if you feel so moved, you can be a part of the entertainment and sign up with Kathy Harris prior to August 15th. And everyone's welcome. This is a great opportunity to invite a friend to come join us. This will be followed on Sunday, the 11th, by our special in-gathering service. There's also a flyer at the rear of the sanctuary about that with specific details as well. And now, let us prepare our whole selves for our time together this morning.
Thank you, Kathy, for that. That was lovely. And thank you for all the music you've put together for today's service. Good morning. These words this morning for our call to worship are from UU Reverend Gretchen Haley. She says, "There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship, no eternal optimism or clarity of conviction, no boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here or how you will solve that problem that you are turning over and over and over in your mind. If your bills do not need to be paid and your checkbook can be a mess, your children may have been up half the night, your hearing aids may not be working, and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us. Where love resides in each of us, yet is somehow more than all. Where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us, and this day anew once again. Come, let us worship together.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join us in lighting the chalice at this time. Words for this morning's chalice lighting are adapted from the words of Bruce Southworth. For the gift of our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we light this chalice. As a symbol of our faith, we light this chalice. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. And now, please stand as you are willing and able for our opening hymn, Rivers of Grace.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah and I are going to teach this hymn to you. It's probably unfamiliar to most of you. It's not in our hymnal. So what I'm going to do is play through the hymn for you one time, and then Sarah is going to sing through the first verse for you, and then we'll go back and repeat the first verse and invite you to join in as you feel comfortable. Okay, so here we go. Verse with Sarah.
Come into the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come into the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come into the healing rivers, rivers of grace, flowing down, down, down to my soul.
Join us on verse 1.
To the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come into the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come into the healing rivers, rivers of grace, flowing down, down, down to my soul.
Verse 2.
Love shines in the healing rivers, rivers
Now, if you would please join me in affirming our faith together. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Please join me in meditation now with these thoughtful words by longtime UU minister Reverend Marnie Harmony. If we do not venture out. If on a starlit night, with the moon brightly shimmering, we stay inside and do not venture out, the evening universe remains a part of life we shall not know. If on a cloudy day, with grayness infusing all and rain dancing rivers in the grass, if we stay inside and do not venture out, the stormy, threatening energy of the universe remains a part of life we shall not know. If on a frosty morning, dreading the chilling air before the sunrise, we stay inside and do not venture out, the awesome cold, quiet, and stillness of the dawn universe remains a part of life we shall not know. If, throughout these grace-given days of ours, surrounded as we are by green life and brown death, hot pink joy and cold gray pain, and miracles, always miracles. If we stay inside ourselves and do not venture out, then the fullness of the universe shall be unknown to us, and our locked hearts shall never feel the rush of worship. As we move into this time of shared silence, consider these thoughts. If we stay inside ourselves and do not venture out, the fullness of the universe shall be unknown to us. Grace-given days and miracles unknown. This is the time in our service when we give special thought to members of our congregation and church community who are hurting, who have suffered a loss, who are worried about an upcoming surgery or looming loss of a loved one, or a serious change in fortune. Those who can use our caring, our love, our support. Those of you at home can enter names in the chat box. Those of you here in the sanctuary are invited to call out the names while we hold them in our hearts. May all those whose names were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day. Our reading this morning is by Anne Lamott, an American writer and activist. Here is what she says about grace. I do not understand at all the mystery that is grace, only that it meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us. These words were actually embedded in the call to worship I used this morning, the inspiration that UU Reverend Gretchen Haley had to write it. I love that Anne Lamott calls grace a mystery, something that meets us where we are, but doesn't leave us where it found us. One morning last fall, I pulled out of the South Strawbridge traffic circle in Cokesbury Village, and I turned right. I know I was on automatic pilot mode. Suddenly, I was in full awareness. Before me, a maple tree stood spread over the street, transformed overnight to a shimmering crimson with the backdropped morning sun filtering through the leaves, translucent and alive. I stopped in my tracks, caught my breath, and I've never forgotten the sight or the feeling it triggered. I was alive, senses totally open and ready for the day. Granted, I'd been primed a bit. We worship associates were using the Soul Matters material that month and were reflecting on awakening. Indeed, that morning's experience was an awakening, and the first moment of grace that I shall share with you this morning. By the time we arrived at our planning for this summer's service, I'd been talked into giving a sermon and had done some soul searching about such experiences, and had landed on this morning's topic, being open to moments of grace. Now, some of the language of religion does not come easily to me, but as I explored the times in my life when I had been deeply moved by an experience, I kept coming up with the word grace. Remembering Betty Stapleford connecting such moments to grace happening, I called Betty out in California, my dear friend, longtime First Unitarian member and UU minister, for a consult. Betty reflected how grace is something that is unexpected, cannot be explained, that it just happens. It doesn't matter whether you deserve it, she says. Such moments can open our lives. It can change us or not. We can decide whether to do something with them, and we can acknowledge the preciousness of life. Now, that's a packed paragraph of possibilities for that moment of grace. As Reverend Larry and I talked about this sermon, he mused with me, how often do Unitarian Universalists talk about grace? Are we so oriented to ourselves and our accomplishments, to our intellectual pursuits, that we're not open to grace, to mysteries? Armed with new determination, I proceeded to reflect further on my array of experiences to share with you this morning. Looking back, my first moment of what I can now comfortably call grace was a visit to the Grand Canyon with my parents when I was about 20. That evening, I wandered back down to the South Rim all alone and stood looking out. I remember listening to the wind and the bird call, but my most vivid memory was my fixation on the word, the concept, the feeling of infinity that bubbled up to me. It left me with the memory of the feeling of infinity and a sense of wonder that I can still conjure up. A few years later, Robert and I were visiting the North Rim, and I still hold a memory of stopping on the trail to watch a child of perhaps 3 years old, crouched down, totally engrossed in inspecting an insight insect devouring something. There were perhaps 6 or 8 of us adults stopped along the trail, transfixed with her wonder and concentration. I felt a simple, powerful feeling of awe. Were we ever that curious? Had I ever studied anything that intently just because it was there? Neither Robert nor I have ever forgotten. And I remember that precious child and not really any of the wonder we must have felt looking down from the North Rim that morning, even after I looked at the pictures we took looking down the canyon. Interesting. Grace did happen through that dear child that morning, and I have held her wonder in my heart. Perhaps you've been deeply moved by music. Sometime during the 1980s, our choir was singing Vivaldi's Gloria. Margaret Love, then our director, had us mix up the parts so we would really blend our voices with each other. Ted Geyer and I ended up next to this beam, leaning into each other as our voices blended, my alto and his bass. It was a total high for me, a feeling like floating, soaring, almost an out-of-body sensation. Grace happened, embraced, and never forgotten. Then there was our Sydney, Australia Opera House experience. When we were taking the tour of the Opera House, we told the guy we had tickets that evening for Vivaldi's Requiem in the last row in the balcony. She assured us those were the best seats in the house for the sound. Looking at this photo, you can only imagine how high up those seats were. Indeed, as the chorus crescendoed, I had all I could do to stay in my seat and revel in the sound. All I wanted to do was to stand up with arms flailed wide and embrace the reverberations. It filled my chest. It filled my soul. Amazing. And indeed, another soaring moment emblazoned in memory. A totally different kind of moment has occurred for me with children. Our grandson's mama is Russian and has always spoken Russian with him while the rest of us spoke English. One time when Ian was about 3, maybe 4, we were visiting and we joined him in a group of mothers and children from his Russian daycare at a nearby park. One of the mothers was handing out snacks, and I prompted Ian to say, "Thank you." He looked at me, looked at her, and then he said, "Spasibo," Russian for thank you. Wow, that little mind knew to answer or translate those words to Russian. It wasn't a spiritual moment. It was an astonishing one for me. I was in awe at his ability, his ease to traverse the 2 languages. Then there was another time during my first year of teaching when we were deep in a 6th grade unit on the solar system. We were talking about the concept of infinity. It came up again. This young lad, Scott Center was his name, shaking his head, pulled himself together, stood up, and pronounced, "Somewhere in the universe there had to be an end, a brick wall." Then he suddenly paused and reflected, but there would be something on the other side of the wall. I never forgot that insight, that opening of his mind on his own. Wow. That challenged me to listen more carefully to my students' reasoning, and I'm still celebrating his insight. Then, too, there have been moments emblazoned in my memory during some of our travels. So, we arrived at the ticket office entrance to Machu Picchu in Peru, the very first visitors of that morning, and we handed our ticket to the official, and we made our way along the edge of this modest outbuilding and turned the corner, and bam! Before us was Machu Picchu, the whole of it, just like the pictures. Verdant green, clouds whisking at the peaks below, a llama nestled down, picture perfect. It was a visceral feeling again, momentary and powerful. We quickly moved on down the levels into the excavated sections to explore the site. But that moment at first sight, that shock of reality, I was really there. And it looked exactly like I knew it would look. That moment has stayed with me and has been savored. In Vietnam, our young trip leader, Hui, taught us how his grandmother had taught him to cross a busy Hanoi street where there were no traffic lights, no traffic signals anywhere. Her instructions were to visualize yourself as a rock and the traffic as water. She told him to start walking slowly, not to pause, to let the traffic, the water, flow right past you. Well, we did it in Hanoi, right through the mass of motorbikes and scooters, all with horns constantly beeping. That's the only way they know how to drive. All around us, we started out walking slowly, never paused. The traffic flowed right around us in the cacophony of sounding horns. We got to the other side of the road, totally exhilarated. Hui's grandmother was right. The traffic went right around us, just like water around the rocks. Would we ever try this again? Anywhere? Probably not. But that moment, we were channeling his grandmother and her love and caring for him, that it would work for us then and there. That exhilaration has lasted forever. Antarctica was yet another experience. Two visual images and visceral feelings jump out. First is what I called our snow globe afternoon. We were to have an hour-long Zodiac tour of Plano Bay. There were about 10 of us in this Zodiac, silently motoring along an electric motor. Snow gently falling in the foggy afternoon. We literally felt like we were inside a snow globe. As we made our way along the icebergs that littered the bay, one iceberg slowly and gently tipped all the way over, its center of gravity shifting from its melting. Several seals were stretched out along another iceberg. A lone penguin perched on another. All sound was suppressed with the fog. It was magical, emblazoned in memory. The moment finally ended when we noticed the ice beginning to close in on our Zodiac. We could see the little crystals forming and knew they would quickly accelerate. Our Zodiac cabin radioed the ship to move toward us as we were becoming surrounded by the rapidly forming pack ice. Yes, grace had indeed happened, and I savored these moments. Several days later, we found ourselves steaming north along the Antarctic Peninsula, our last day to be in Antarctica. These last views of the coastline were simply breathtaking. The snowy peaks, the glaciers extending down to the water, a few swaths of exposed rock that stood black against the white surroundings. I found myself going back up on deck to look again and again to fully appreciate the vastness of the coastline and to take more pictures. It was getting late in the day, actually after 9 o'clock, then 10 o'clock p.m., and the lighting was warm and luminescent. It was so amazingly beautiful that I found myself in tears. I would trek up on deck, embrace the vista with my eyes, tear myself away to go back down in tears, then back up again later with a fresh new view of the vast wilderness, once again blowing my mind. Just incredibly beautiful, a truly spiritual experience. That feeling stayed with me after we returned home. People would ask about our trip, and as soon as I tried to describe what we had experienced, I would find myself in tears again. Indeed, touched by grace. While those were powerful nature-related travel experiences, there were several cultural moments worthy of sharing with you as well. In southern India, we had the bonus of encountering several Hindu temple celebrations beyond our itinerary. And then the next afternoon, our trip leader suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's a cremation," and ordered the driver to pull over and stop. We tumbled out of our minibus and made our way along the roadside to a funeral bier that had been built right next to the road and above the riverside below. The body of a 72-year-old woman was shrouded in white material and laid over logs. They were just finishing covering it with dried dung patties. Then they spread straw over the body and began to coat it with mud they were digging up from the river. The next step was to puncture holes in the mud so it wouldn't explode and for the air to get to the fire. The woman's grandson performed a ritual circling the body 3 times with an earthen jug that was pierced once each time, releasing a stream of water, just as his grandmother's life had left her. Then the grandson lit the fire in each of the 3 holes, and the entire group turned to walk away. A priest stayed with the deceased to make sure the fire successfully consumed the body. I stood there, still processing the water flowing out of the vessel as his grandmother's life had flowed out. What a beautiful metaphor. What an honor for this window into this local culture. It left me incredibly moved. At the end of our trip, we happened on one more cultural moment, a wedding. The priest had just brought the couple outside after the ceremony. Our trip leader spotted them and had our minibus pull in. The priest was asking them to pray to the sun god, and the ritual was for the groom to touch the bride's face to look to the sun. In my mind, there was a click when he did that, a moment of connection with the divine. We were in the presence of something remarkable. Afterwards, the couple insisted we take a photo with them. Sweet. We were so appreciated their invitation to join them in their celebration to document that moment. It was a simple gesture on top of our witnessing their very special moment and my sense of connection with the divine. One more travel moment begs to be included that I shared with you once before. Göbekli Tepe, a working archaeological site in southeastern Turkey that we visited. Ironically, Robert had just read about this in our most recent National Geographic before we left, and our trip leader took us off our published itinerary to visit the site. When we arrived, the workers and researchers were gathered in the shade and benches waiting for their ride back home. Klaus Schmidt, the lead archaeologist who found the site and started excavation in 1994, came over to greet us and to explain they had just finished their day's work. He told us how he and his colleagues had determined these findings represent people from the hunter-gatherer culture already developing a religion and creating places to celebrate it as a community, shattering what we thought we knew regarding the order in which this happened and how early it occurred. All this was happening 12,000 years ago. 7,000 years before Stonehenge, just at the end of the last ice age. The crews all left, and a guard walked with us as we circled the site. Below in the excavation, large upright stones were capped with other stones in a T shape. There was a hush, no real sounds in the afternoon heat, just a sense of timelessness, and us trying to imagine the beings there so long ago making sense of their world. 12,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers who were just starting agriculture in order to feed the workers who were building this set of circles for a religious ceremony. The times involved were mind-bending, almost unimaginable. It felt like a sacred spot. I was in awe, and I still shake my head in wonder. So some of these moments we had to go halfway around the world to experience, and others came to us. For 52 years, Robert piloted small planes. One of his greatest joys was to fly through or around cumulus clouds, mountains and valleys. Yes, we were stopped by storms and have great memories of nights like one in Gettysburg while we watched a major electrical storm safely from the ground after we landed rather than flying into the approaching line of thunderstorms. But there was something about the grandeur and power of banks of clouds that never ceased to quicken our hearts. Robert used to love to thread his way around them, while I exulted in noting the colors of the light reflecting in these towering colossals in the air. When I pressed Robert to articulate what it was that moved him, he sent me to John Gillespie Magee's poem High Flight that begins, "Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered rings." Later it reads, "I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace where never lark or even eagle flew." And then it ends, "I put out my hand and touched the face of God." Only a pilot could have come up with this capturing, flying this way. His words mean so much to Robert that he finds himself in tears whenever he recites the poem. Grace happening for him again and again. Looking back, I see that in each of these examples, there is a visceral feeling I experienced, one that stayed with me and one that I can conjure back up. I'm also aware that I'm more open to such moments at this point in my life. Soul Matters exercises helped with some of that. Perhaps my age, I'm now in my 83rd year and finding joy and slowing down and savoring experiences. Our son is connected to the UU congregation of Fairfax, Virginia, and I'm on their mailing list after attending many services there. I was delighted to know last week's service, actually hosted by Cedar Lane Church, also focused on grace, so UUs sometimes do talk about it. There, the sermon title was, "When Grace Strikes." So we're not the only UUs reflecting on grace, and I love the notion of grace striking. I also just heard from Betty Stapleford, who was inspired by our conversation about grace, and she preached on the topic at her California UU church last Sunday. I'm eagerly awaiting the link so I can hear her take. Here's one more moment that came to us. Soon after we moved to Cokesbury Village, we attended a concert in our lower atrium. It was indoors, as rain was forecast that afternoon. The atrium wall is all windows that look down below to our wide lawn and down to the ponds. A thunderstorm had just blown through, and the sky in front of us and the east was pitch black as it moved on. Suddenly, the sun emerged behind us and flooded the lawn and trees before us with a glorious, warm yellow light. Then the colors of a rainbow began to emerge across the black sky before us, first in subtle tones and then more and more intensely. I think each of us caught our breath. It was truly glorious. Yes, grace strikes here too. So, is grace always happening? Could it be that sometimes we are open? Something shifts? I think so. Are there ways to open those windows to see more? I'm certainly working on being more aware and slowing down. Is there a danger if we work at it and not just let it happen? Probably, but we do have to be open to it. I'm grateful for this opportunity to create this morning's service and to be focused on these ideas. I need to hear this sermon myself, to consciously slow down and be open to such moments. Moments I will plow right past in my zeal to live and love life without these reminders of how much more rich and meaningful my life is and can be when I slow down. What do we do with them? Be open to them, savor, celebrate. Allow yourself and myself time to appreciate. May it be so.
I invite you to prepare for our stewardship offering this morning. And in so doing, I know that many of you have already planned for your offering this day. But I invite you to pause. Think of moments of grace that you have received. Or maybe there are moments of grace that, as Helen says, have stricken. And reflect on this act of giving during our stewardship time. I invite you to give as you are able to the mission of this community of faith. There are 4 ways that you can give to the church as displayed on the screen and as we mention each week. For those of you in the sanctuary, you may leave cash or a check in the box at the rear of the sanctuary as you leave. You can always mail a check to the church here on Halstead Road. You can go to the website, firstuuwilm.org, and donate. Or you can use the Vanco Mobile Faith Engagement app and make a donation on your smart device. Thank you for your generosity this morning. I invite you to join me in dedicating this morning's offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
It's how
Our closing words this morning are written by Jim Wickman. Our time together ends. In the days before we come together again, may our actions match our words. May our thoughts be filled with love. And may we truly make a difference in this troubled world. As we extinguish the chalice this morning, I share with you the words written by Krista Taves. It is our work with each other in covenant that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but the light lives on in the directions which we have chosen this day. The light of this faith lives on in us, together, in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen, and blessed be. And now, if you would stand as you're willing and able, as we sing together our closing hymn, number 206, Amazing Grace.
It's actually number 205. I should have told you. Different version of the same hymn. Okay.
Amazing grace, how sweet Thank